Well, it's a great joy to be back with you here in the Chapel of the Proclamation after a wonderful pilgrimage to Holy Land in the footsteps of Pope Francis. Prayed for all of you and your intentions there, as well as our listeners and the people who watch the Mass every day. So today, October 4th, is a feast of St. Francis of Assisi. Assisi is a small town in central Italy, and St. Francis was born there in 1181, and he lived for 44 years. And for the first half of his life, he enjoyed life. And if you ever go to Assisi, you'll say, yeah, you could enjoy life here. It's beautiful here, good food, nice clothing, beautiful wine, all sorts of things. He really enjoyed it, but it was not bringing him happiness. And one day, he was praying in the little rundown chapel of San Damiano. And Jesus spoke to him from the crucifix, and he said, Francis, Francis, rebuild my church. It's in ruins. They still have that crucifix there. We have a copy of it here in the confessional here. And he took the Lord's words quite literally. And he wanted to rebuild that little church of St. Damiano. So he went home and he went to his father's business and sold all of his father's inventory. His father was on a business trip and he sold all of his father's inventory. It was textile. And he used that to rebuild the church. When his father got home, he was not happy or pleased with it. So what did you do? I sold it all so he could rebuild the church. Why would you do that? Because Jesus spoke to me. My son, you're nuts. So his father dragged him before the local bishop and demanded that he pay him everything back. And the bishop was amused by all of this. And so Francis said, okay, Dad, I give you back everything you ever gave me. And he literally took off all his clothes there in front of everyone and the bishop. The bishop thought it was hilarious. He loved it. The father didn't like it. But Francis found a new freedom. Freedom from material things. Freedom from fear. Freedom from oppression. He was so filled with joy. Then he went out in the woods to praise God and speak to the birds. Whereupon he was accosted by some robbers and they beat him up. Left him there half dead. And it was, Francis said, this is how you treat me, right? What's so remarkable about his life, there's so many great stories, is he was never ordained as a priest. He was a deacon. He was a beggar. He was an itinerant preacher. And he had nothing. And that's what gave him power. That's the paradox. The paradox of poverty is poverty brings power and conviction. So he heard about this crusade in Egypt and the Sultan and the Christians being taken to prison and being killed. So he decided to go to Egypt and convert the Sultan. How did he do that? We can't just book a flight. This is year 1225. He walked there, and he got an audience with the Sultan. And the Sultan was so impressed by this skinny little guy with no shoes on, trying to tell him about the truth of Jesus Christ. He said, okay, if Jesus Christ truly is God, prove it. I want you to walk across those hot coals right now in your bare feet. And Francis got up. He was just about to walk over the coals, and the Sultan said, no, no, no. Don't do that. Don't do that. And he was so taken by him. He didn't convert, but he said, Francis, you and your brothers will be in charge of all of the Christian holy sites in this land. And to this day, the Franciscans are in charge of all of the holy sites there. And over the centuries, there have been martyrs. And right now, it's a very difficult time in the Holy Land, as you know. But you see, there's the paradox, the power of poverty. And it was the beginning of a glorious century for the church, the 13th century, with other great saints who had come along, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Louis of France, St. Clare, St. Bonaventure, St. Dominic. The next century was kind of tough, but that was a good century, the 13th century. So that's something we can reflect on. How do we live that Christian virtue of poverty? St. Josemaria, who had a special I would say, inspiration to help lay people to be saints, said, yes, we too have to live the virtue of poverty. But we're not going around begging, and we're not without shoes on. But he would give three ideas or suggestions to live the virtue of poverty. They're very broad, but they're very personal. Everybody has to figure it out for themselves. He would say, in the first place, consider nothing your own, even if you have title of it to it. Just don't consider it your own. Like, that's my side of the garage, or that's my leftovers, that's my chair in front of the TV. Consider nothing your own. Second, when you have a chance to buy something for yourself, and nobody will notice the difference, choose the second best, not the very best. Because if you choose the very best, then it owns you, you don't own it. And it might seem like a little thing, but it makes a big difference so that material things don't run our lives. And third, if you're lacking something that's necessary, don't complain. And I think that attitude of not complaining really goes to the core of that detachment and living the virtue of poverty, so that we're always grateful to God for the things that he has given us.